We've looked at the randomized comparative experiment and the randomized block design. So we have one more experiment left that we're going to look at in this class. That's called the matched pairs design. And a matched pairs design is a randomized experiment in which pairs are used or created that are very similar so that two treatments can be compared. So we're not doing a whole lot of treatments, it's just two treatments here in this set. So it's a little bit of a difference from this and the other experiment designs that we looked at. So typically, one part of the pair is the control and the other part receives the treatment. Subjects are sometimes paired because they are similar in ways not being researched. Matching subjects in this way can reduce variation in much the same way that blocking does. So kind of will have a little bit of that blocking flavor. There's a lot of different ways that you can set up a matched pairs experiment. So let's look at a couple different examples of these. So the first one is probably a little bit obvious, and that is just use twins. That would be considered a naturally occurring pair, and you'll typically see that in medical research or maybe like sociology or psychology, where maybe they're looking at twins that were separated at birth in some sort of nature nurture experiment. But twins would be one way of doing this. Twins are probably pretty hard to find, especially if you need a lot of them. So another way people go about this is partnered subjects. So we look for two things that are very similar to people that are very similar in a number of respects. And then that's a created pair that we can use. So there's a TV show that actually illustrates this really well. It's called Bowl, and it's about a jury trial consultant. So one of the things he does is he helps the lawyer pick the jury that's most favorable to their client. But then once that jury is chosen, he has his team research all of the jurors. So maybe they look at somebody and they're like, okay, she identifies as a woman, she's in her early 40s, grew up in Colorado in a rural area, grew up in a family with just one other sibling, right? And they kind of go through and look at the religious and majors and political affiliations and things like that. And then they go find a second person who is identical or very, very similar in all of those respects. So maybe they also grew up in a rural area. Maybe they're also just one other child in the family in their early 40s, right? So matching these up in all of these ways. And what he does in the show is he sets the second set of jurors that are a copy of the first in a room and they're broadcast the trial. So they see the trial and he can see in real time how they would vote if they had to go to the jury room right now. It also allows him to try out trial strategies. So he can come into this practice jury and say, okay, if I argue it this way, would that change how you're going to vote? Okay. So he's trying to figure out what works best with this mirror jury and then apply that to the actual jury in the actual case. So that would be an example of a created pair. You can also have someone that's paired with themselves. So one example of that would be a single subject does a before and after. So maybe we take someone's resting heart rate, we have them do an exercise plan for 12 weeks. And after that, we take their heart rate again. And so then we look at that difference in heart rates. And another way you could have a pair that's with themselves is something like a blind taste test. So you would use random chance to determine which thing to try first, and then they would try the other one second, and give their preference. So a blind taste test would be another way of this. Okay, so that match pairs experiment uses a pairing to test two treatments or a control and a treatment. And each pairing gets the same treatments. So in a lot of respects, this is a lot like a block design, except for that in a block design, we might have 2, 3, 4 blocks and that we're repeating this experiment with. Whereas this is going to be every single pair that's in your group. So you could have 30 pairs that you're repeating these treatments with. The one bonus is that it is only 2 treatments. So unlike the other designs where you could have an unlimited number of treatments, we only have 2 treatments. So while you are repeating it with every single person, it's only 2 things. So that does make it a lot more manageable. All right, so those kind of how those two are similar and different. The nice thing about matched pairs is it allows us to draw separate conclusions about each pairing. And a lot of times that allows you to see an outlier that crept in there and kind of investigate that a little bit better. Once we've looked at each pairing, then we can see if there's an overall pattern or trend there. This allows us to see the differences caused by the treatments more clearly, and these are known as dependent samples. Okay, and so when we get towards the end of the course, we're actually going to look at how to do a statistical test using these dependent or matched samples. All right, so come back in the next video and we'll look at some of these diagrams so you can understand these differences a little bit better.